Okay,
Perfect.
yeah. Okay, good. Cool. Okay, great. Good to see
Yay.
you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So yeah, first time seeing you in real person.
Yeah.
Almost.
Thank you for reaching
Um,
out and like wanting to do the interview. It's super exciting to like connect with other people in the community and yeah, it's nice.
yes. Yes, it is definitely. Yeah, I'm excited about yeah, having also thank you for wanting to take the time and come on my podcast and yeah, share your story on your podcast and whatever we're gonna get into. I'm excited about also that you're in Canada in Vancouver. I've been there and have
Yes.
some family there, so that's yeah, it's cool. That's
I'm
cool.
eight
Okay,
months
well let's.
into Vancouver
Huh?
now. So I'm 8 months into Vancouver and I feel like I've officially like fallen in love because I moved at like the height of the Vancouver season. So when I was there, it was like September was beautiful. And then I experienced like a few months of just like cloudiness and rain. But yesterday, my
Uh,
partner and I went for a walk and we just watched the sunset at the beach. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm entering like the nice,
mm,
nice season. And yeah, Vancouver's stunning.
right. Did you say Vancouver?
Yes, Vancouver.
Because it rains, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard that one before. Funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, cool. Well, yeah, let's get into it. So I found your podcast. I don't know if I've been following for longer than that, or maybe I might have seen it before that. But it is December, January. But when did you start the podcast? And yeah, why start the podcast? And yeah, let's
For
go
sure.
there.
Yeah. So I actually originally started Girl on Girl in 2021 with my old co-host Sarah. So originally the podcast was kind of like a straight and a gay perspective coming together to talk all things.
Interesting.
Yeah, to talk about everything, like whether the topics were
Mm.
taboo or also just like really fun to kind of have that best friend banter of people who have like two
Mm.
totally different experiences. So it originally started as a pandemic project because I used to live with Sarah when she was in Toronto as well for like, I think it was like 6 or 7 years, like a very, very long time. Like we essentially grew up together in our 20s. So we thought, why not have a
Mm.
podcast where we can showcase like our wine chats that we would always have at the house as roommates, like just on a public platform, and also have that relatability for people to kind of see the friendship dynamic, but also learn more about queerness. And Sarah learned a lot through me as well, living with me while I was discovering my
Mm.
sexuality. So that's how it started. And it expanded to something we had never thought it would. Like we ended up gaining some really awesome interviews and incredible guests. And the community for Girl on Girl is just, it's been amazing to see how that unfolded. But just recently in
Yeah.
2024, I started hosting on my own because Sarah lives in Portugal now. She made a move, yeah,
Mm.
to
Wow.
Portugal. And we just talked about it. It was not like an easy decision for her to step off of the podcast, but just with the
Mm.
time difference and like changes in her life, because Vancouver and Portugal, it's very hard to kind of meet at a time to record. We're like on opposite time zones. So she just decided, you know what? I've been on it for like this amount of years, like essentially like 3 years at this point. Um,
Mm.
I think it's time for you to just take Girl on Girl and like totally take it to where you want to, where like you just have the vulnerable chats. Like I think you can take it and like still continue to make it like a really impactful podcast for others and also for yourself. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm hosting on my own. But originally, I do want to give credit to Sarah. She is the person who
Right.
started it with me. We came up with the concept together, everything. So yeah, that's how it started.
Mm. Right. Okay. And so thank you for sharing that. So you're from Vancouver. Are you born in Vancouver? Coming? No. So you sorry, you just said 8 months. So that means you're not from Vancouver, right? Where did you start from? Where are you from? And where?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was born in Oshawa, Ontario, which is like from Toronto. That's probably like an
Mm,
hour drive away. So that's where I was born, but I
right.
grew up in Whitby, which is like from Oshawa. It's very, very close. Whitby is just like a smaller town outside of Toronto. Not even like it's
Okay.
in the GTA, just Greater Toronto area. Same
Ah, Greater
distance.
Toronto area. Okay,
Yeah.
GTA. I was thinking, what is she saying the game?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
GTA. That's That's
yeah.
yeah, that's so funny. I didn't even put two and two together. But I moved out of Whitby right when I graduated high school to Toronto for school and then lived in Toronto for 10 years, literally up until I turned, I guess like a little over until I was 28. So the reason why I moved to
Mm,
Vancouver was not only did
mm,
Sarah spoke so highly of Vancouver because she had actually lived here first. So we would visit her a lot, like my friends and I, and then my partner and I made a visit to Vancouver too, and we just fell in love.
and Sarah is the one. Oh, that's your girlfriend, not the one who moved to Portugal.
No, so
Sorry.
my partner's name is Crystal.
Uh-huh.
So her and I
Okay, yeah.
we've been together for 2 years now, but her and I made a trip to Vancouver to visit, and then
Mm,
we met up with Sarah as well, and it just with the timing, we were like, this kind of makes sense for us to just try something new. And that's how I ended
mm,
up in Vancouver. So yeah, now I'm 8 months in, but really liking it. It's been a
mm.
nice change.
Uh-huh. Yeah, love that. Wow, okay. So you're from what? How old are you now? I
29.
thought you were like, okay, I was thinking you were like, I don't know, 25 or something.
No, I look younger, but yeah,
25
I'm
is near the
29.
way.
I'll be
Yeah,
30
okay,
this
good.
year.
Oh, okay. How are
Yeah,
you feeling about that?
I'm excited. I've
Uh-huh, yeah.
I've genuinely always been that person who is like ready for my 30s because
Uh-huh.
I just feel like there's this sense of more of like a knowingness that I feel that I didn't really have when I was in my 20s. I feel like I went
Mm,
through so many ups and downs in my 20s and discovery and not being so sure,
mm,
self-assured about myself and also
yeah.
with the sexuality too. But I'm just in a better place. Like I still deal with things all the time. Like I still suffer from anxious feelings from time to time and like things I've noticed that have
Yeah.
actually gotten worse as I get older. But I feel like now I have more
Mm,
self-awareness and the tools versus in my 20s, I didn't have that. So I'm excited to turn 30.
right.
I think it's a great decade.
Mm. Yeah. What a, yeah. Sitting with that for a second. So when did when did you like I don't know why it's so weird for me to ask that question right now. Or maybe because it's just been a while since I had the talk with them. When did you just like discover your sexuality or like get like realize that you were into women or yeah, when did that kind of when did the exploration begin for you?
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about this as being like my main story was I was in high
Oh
school.
yes.
And
Okay.
I had a best friend throughout high school, and we call her Alice on the podcast. We actually talked about her a lot on Girl, giving her this code name Alice. That's not her real name. But she
Okay.
was my best friend, and we met at a dance class. And it was a very classic, like, you don't realize it, but you're falling in love with your best friend. And I was so young. I was only
Mm,
15. Um, but I
mm,
actually think it started a lot younger. Now that I look back at like how I was as a kid and like infatuations I would have with women in my life or
mm,
even female
right.
celebrities, I was like, wait, I actually think I was really into these women, not just like looking at them as older sisters or wanting to be around
Right.
them. I think I really was crushing on them. So I think it started as early as like 4 or
Mm,
5 years old. And I didn't really. come to terms with my sexuality until I was like 19, really. Until I started realizing like,
Mm.
oh, I like this could be a thing for me because I'm very femme presenting and I would always be
Right,
drawn to femme energies, but I wasn't seeing a lot of representation there, so it didn't feel real to me. Um,
right,
I
yeah.
thought it was like a solo experience and I kind of just shoved it right down. But
Mm.
then I came out as bisexual first when I was 19. I was like, okay, the label bi
Mm.
makes a lot of sense. But then over time, I came out as a lesbian because I realized I think it was really society that made me feel like, oh, we're conditioned to like meet men. So I never really like
Mm.
thought about it. I just thought,
Mm.
oh, I like girls too. But then over time, I was like, wait, I think you only like girls. Um, and I don't think
Yeah.
labels are everything. Like I know so many people who have a complicated relationship with labels, and labels can switch. So I'm not like, you need to be stuck with one. But I know for me, coming out as a lesbian really helped me in many ways for the
Mm.
things I was struggling with before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that it's funny because I think when I really felt like I was um kind of well I'm the same as you that I've known it since a very early age. And I was like, there's something here. I could never really like. I think it wasn't until like my early teens or like 15, 14, around there or so. I was like maybe earlier. Um, but like definitely at like the early years of kindergarten. Um, I remember that. Yeah, it's really it's tough with um like the coming out as bisexual or lesbian. I have a big sister who had the same experience with that. And it's a lot of complicated, or it looked very, I don't know, just talking about it in the family and so it felt very, you know, the word that's coming up for me is complicated, but it's I don't almost also kind of don't want to put that word on to it because I feel like that was more so the like receiving of it that was more so that or like that people weren't really great at like she was like coming out of that. For me it was more like in high school after high school. So
Hmm.
that was there a bit like the 19, which I just and something on thought that's funny. But yeah, yeah. So how like has your family been great around it, and how's that been? And also, I guess that the podcast is like a thing that has I assume so been something that has helped you kind
Hmm.
of go through and juggle some of the things and like yeah through that how's that been like or what yeah.
Yeah, well, first, like my family has been really, really good. And I feel like
Hmm.
for a lot of Indians, I'm Indian Canadian. So my parents were born,
Right.
they were both born in India, and then they moved to Canada
Right.
when they were in their mid 20s. So they were actually quite young when they came to Canada. Um, they lived in Montreal, they were living in Toronto, and then they moved to Whitby. So, yeah, when I
Hmm.
always think about it, I'm like, wow, my parents were young, like 23, like 26, 27. Like my dad was a little older. So it's like, wow, you were very young coming down here. So I think in ways like
Yeah.
my parents were really like they're very progressive, which is amazing. And I think even growing up in a progressive household was so nice. Like there was never any
Mm,
judgments around sexuality, but it's also not something we really talked about too. And I think it's because that was also just the
yeah.
society growing up. Like, I mean, me being younger,
Yeah.
growing up in the mid 90s, early 2000s, it also just wasn't something we were
Mm,
seeing often. So really the only representation we had was Rosie O'Donnell, like for women, Ellen DeGeneres, like those were like the main
yeah,
people.
Ellen DeGeneres.
And I remember my sister, she's 8 years older than me. So my sister would watch like the L Word or knew of the L Word.
Mm,
But I wasn't watching it, and I don't think my parents were. So it's like they didn't see, I just don't think they saw enough like femme queer representation. So
yeah.
when I first came out to my mom, I just remember her being a little more
Mm,
confused just because she just didn't think I like looked, quote unquote, like looked gay. But
yeah.
she's been
Mm,
amazing, and I knew she wasn't coming from a malicious place. I think she was genuinely like learning
mm,
too. And we didn't have too many like lesbians in our circle. Like I have gay cousins who are male. So, but it was
mm,
just, it was interesting how it's
right.
different when it with women. I don't know. That's just how it felt a little bit. But my dad, he like didn't really ask me too much. He was just like, oh, that's great. But he was like, it was kind of more fun. Like he was more interested in like, oh, like who's your type kind of thing. And we'd have like open conversations about that in like a very like nice
Right.
way that felt very freeing for me. But even with
Yeah.
my mom, she never had any issues, and she actually more so was concerned about the types of girls I was interested in because she knew who they were. Like, for example, the Alice
Mm,
in my high school who I really liked. I did tell my mom I liked her, but my mom just wasn't really a fan
right.
of that person for me, just based on some things
Right.
she had witnessed like throughout my friendship, like some drama and like me. And I think for her,
Yeah.
she was like, I just don't
Yeah.
really want you to be with that person. And nothing
Right.
against
Yeah.
Alice as a person at all. It's just that
Mm,
I think that's all my mom was seeing as who I was into. And unfortunately, too, I had a lot of experiences in my early 20s with women who just weren't very sure and maybe were a little more flighty and not like wanting to
mm,
be committed. And so
mm,
I think that was also hard for my mom to wrap around her head as like, is Persis going to find a woman who wants to commit? So I think that was really the only things that would happen, but with reassurance and sending my mom and dad podcasts or music videos that showcased relationships, like they were very receptive and very interested in learning more. So
mm,
it was very, very easy with my immediate family for sure.
mm.
I
I'm
appreciate
learning a
it.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated it because it could have been the opposite. I know in many uh like some families too, like in Indian culture, it is frowned upon. Like I have a lot of friends who are also Indian who did not have that experience with their parents. It was very hush hush. I can't tell them. So I'm very, very grateful that I was able to
Mm,
have that experience and also show the side of that, like it could be possible in ways. Like my mom has been on my YouTube channel talking about
mm,
guessing like queer slang. Like I was asking my mom what a pillow princess is, what is a bear? Like there are things like she was fully talking about. And it was just, it's good to see
yeah.
that perspective too, I think.
Yes, definitely. That reminds me of I was I remember um one of some of the YouTubers I was watching a lot when I was 19, 18, 20, and still watch sometimes, not as much. I'm 23 now. Which is like crazy just having it like flashback to that. Um, but that was Alanya Joy. Um, and there's this other Canadian. She's done some climbing with videos with her. But I remember she did like videos with her mom.
Mm,
Um,
nice.
like as you just said, where they would kind of talk about these things. And yeah, I don't know, it's just nice to see that there's someone who is like that. Because for me, I did, as I mentioned before, that was more like um, I think just because I grew up with um like having this experience of looking up to an older sister where um one parent was more like very questionable of like is it that or is it that, like is it bi or is it lesbian, or and why is it that. And I don't know, maybe I think back at sometimes I think back and I'm like, well, I can see definitely how I found it like scary for myself to come out or just to share it. Just like having overheard kind of conversations like that.
Hmm.
I was like, well, what are they gonna like say, or how are they gonna receive it with me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so it's been weird and kind of tumultuous for me in that sense. But I've had other great relationships that has been so welcoming with it. Um, and yeah, my dad, he passed away when I was 18, but he was like really supportive about um family that were yeah, that were homosexual, or that were experiencing, or whatever they were calling it, or yeah, expressing it. So that is kind of something I've just always taken with me. Um, yeah, I was thinking about like for the people or those listening that um what are like, because you were mentioning like that your family, or that you found your family being progressive. And yeah, I was just wondering like what are like kind of things that what are things that made it feel like that for you, and that people can like, oh, that's me too, or maybe I could take that step, or yeah, or
Hmm.
even for myself, like what's, because I was thinking just like the sharing of a podcast, that is sometimes something I feel like, oh no, I'll keep that for myself, and then like, and sometimes it maybe is like that, and or other times it's like, well, I kind of feel like I want to try that. No.
Oh, yeah. You mean like with the confidence of even releasing something like that to like talk about sexuality
I was
opening?
thinking, yeah, I was thinking like if you're like what are things that made it felt like that your parents were progressive in their way of growing with your experience or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the reason why I felt that type of relationship in my family, and I use the word progressive, is because I think
Yeah.
that they were the type of parents that were very open to like sitting down and having conversations
Mm,
that maybe a lot of people might not think they would want to talk to their parents about. And I only say
yeah.
that because I even remember a conversation I was having with my cousin who I'm really close to. And he was saying,
Mhm.
like, I'm surprised that you can just have these open chats with your parents. Like, your parents are really cool, you know? Like I'm not
Mm,
I could not do that with my parents. Like it's like a different type of relationship. So I used to see that stuff like
yeah.
kind of early on, and I think it was even the type
Mm,
of media we consumed. Like my parents kind of exposed me also to a lot of like movies that maybe a young kid would be like, "Whoa, I'm surprised my parents are like taking me to see this." But
right.
it's also a part of being human, and they're like, yeah, like come with us,
Yeah.
like we're not going to get a babysitter for you because we want to see this like I don't know, like R-rated movie, like I'm gonna take my kid. And I just feel like I was exposed to a lot in ways like where I could see that it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm sitting next to my mom and there's this like steamy scene happening. I'm kind of like, okay, like my parents, like let's be really open and chat. And if I have questions, I can like talk to my parents about it, about how I'm
Mm,
feeling. Um, and I just think that that can be kind of rare sometimes. But they were
yeah.
very open with me. And I think my struggles didn't come from the home I was growing up in. It was more like the like society and more so media and being femme presenting, not seeing representation in my high school. That kind of like more outside factors too, where that was more difficult than it being like, oh, I have to tell my parents I'm scared. That was actually kind of
Mm,
one of the easier parts
right.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Glad to hear that great story. Glad to hear that you had good experience. Yeah, it's so different.
It's yeah, and it's I'm
Yeah.
very lucky and like maybe it is because they moved to Canada very young. So like that could but I also
Mm,
think it's in their character to be like that too. Like my mom and dad as individuals are very like very headstrong in like the things they believe in and a lot of it is like
mm,
equality. Like that's always been like one of the main things we always talked about too as a kid. And I had my
right.
sister on my podcast as well because since she's 8 years older than me, I didn't really see
Mm,
her growing up as well, like her being a teen. Like I was so young, so I didn't really see those as like see how things were like even different with my parents and her versus my parents and me
mm,
because there is such a gap that it's like there could be like certain differences whereas like what she would tell me is like she felt like my parents were more like protective because it could have been like it's our first
mm,
kid like and you go through all of that and then she's
right.
like 8 years later you come around and they kind of like it's just a different dynamic. um
Yes.
but
Yes.
she told me she found my parents were very progressive because she could talk to them about things that were happening in the world when it came to race and it came to like prejudice and like awful things that were happening to people when she was so young. And like she was able to have like beautiful conversations with my parents and for them to explain like why this happens and why it's wrong. Um, so like why it's wrong that people are treated uh, any differently than they should be, right? And that was the first
Right.
time she noticed like, oh, okay, I can talk to my parents about these things. It's nice.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Mm. And that's your older sister, right?
Older sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's that. Wow, yeah. It's so interesting with the dynamics there. Um, it is. It is. Let's jump into and thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
Hmm.
sharing that. Let's jump into um podcast anymore.
Sure.
You've had it for how long have you had it for now?
Since
Or doing it?
2021, so 4 years now. Actually, we would have hit our 4 years, I think, sometime around now, because we launched our first episode in March of 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Cool. What was the first episode for you like?
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. The first episode was so funny. I actually remember Sarah and I jumping on a recording, not knowing what we were doing at all, like full transparency. We were like, uh, just throwing caution to the wind at this point, but it was fun. And
Right.
we mainly got into our backstory. So I talked about my backstory, my upbringing, and
Mm,
how I realized I was queer. Sarah got into her story. And then that's just kind of how it started to progress into these lovely chats. But I feel like as I would listen back to some
mm,
old episodes and we get into the newer ones, I can notice like we um
yeah.
we would get a little bit uh like we get to the point quicker. I feel like early us would just be
Right.
rambling all over the place, which is fine. Like that was also us being new to the podcast game. Sorry,
Yeah,
podcast game.
yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to look back at those. It's kind of like our own personal diary, some of those episodes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is really interesting to look back at like first episodes you do. It's I look back sometimes it's yeah, it's funny. It's rare that I'm just realizing that now, or I don't know if I'm just realizing that now, but I've not really like talked about anyone with like think about looking back at like your first episode you do, because it's like because it's brave to first like do that thing, like do a podcast and put it out there, and so many things, and as you just said in the start, you might be like going all over the place, and yeah, what has your has your values around also I just noticed cutting myself over here um that the my Zoom I have like the 40 minutes so it's ends in like 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I did see
I don't
that
know
too.
which you do that too. Okay. Um how long do you got and would you be open to like hop off, hop on and then end
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Do you want to hop off now just so we don't like somehow get rid of the time? So I'll wait for this to convert and then I'll
We
add it
can
to the
do that.
drive. Yeah. Do you want me
Let's
to
do
send
that.
do you want me to send you a Zoom too? I could also do that if you want.
You can do that. You can do that.
Okay, perfect. I'll see you like in a few minutes
All
then.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. Let's do that. Good.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you for